同事，我哋夠晒鐘㗎啦，咁啊
Members, it's time. And some deputations are not here because they staged an activity outside. So let's first invite the administration in.
好，各位同事，我哋
Members, I'd like to remind members that on the 25th of November, we will meet again. This meeting should have been held in October, but because of the policy address debate, all the time slots were used up. So we will meet again on 25th of November, which is also a Saturday at 2:30 p.m. We will talk about the rights of children under the pressure of exams and homework. So hopefully members will attend. Today, we will discuss the human rights of children under poverty. As you know, we signed the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, and according to the convention, children should have the right to be educated and to participate and be developed. Hong Kong has a lot of children under poverty. Before policy intervention, the percentage was about 21%. After intervention, we still have 16% of children under poverty, which is a very high ratio.
In other advanced jurisdictions, I think our rate is higher than those jurisdictions. In some countries, they even have plans to eliminate children's poverty. In the UK, they have a plan to eliminate poverty in respect of children by 2020. But we're still looking forward to as to whether or not they can achieve the goal. In Hong Kong, we do not have a similar plan. But anyway, we don't want children to live in poverty. We want them to have equal rights of development. Today, we're grateful to many deputations who've come here to give us their views. We understand that the government has also prepared some papers on the topic. So first of all, I'd like to welcome all the officials, including the Undersecretary for Labour and Welfare, Mr. Cheng from the Education Department, two colleagues from the SWD, and colleagues from the Department of Health, the LCSD, the Working Family and Student Financial Assistance Agency, and also the Office of the Government Chief Information Officer. They're all here to listen to your submissions. We've also invited the Security Bureau and the members of the Preparatory Committee on the Children's Commission, but they said that later on they will be conducting a public consultation on the preparation for a Children's Commission. Therefore, they are not able to attend. The Security Bureau also said that it's not within the topic is not within the portfolio, so they're not here either. So I'd like to thank all the officials who are present here today to listen to the deputations I understand that the Undersecretary has prepared some background. Basically, I think you have prepared some materials about the current policies. Why don't we instead go straight to the submissions? We have deputations, including the children, can freely speak your mind. However, what you say will not be covered by the LegCo's Powers and Privileges Ordinance. In other words, you will need to be responsible for what you're saying here. But that doesn't mean that we are restricting, you from speaking the truth. So please make good use of your 3 minutes. So each of you will have 3 minutes to speak. We will begin with Mr. Chow Wing Hung, Sam Shui Po District Councillor. I'm Chow Wing Hung, District Councillor from Sam Shui Po. The chairman already quoted some figures. Well, I'd like to tell you about the situation in Sam Shui Po. The Poverty Commission announced the 2015 report on poverty in Hong Kong, and Sam Shui Po, as usual, is one of the poorest districts. The figures show that we have a poverty rate of 17%, and among the poor people, 21% are below 18, namely the children that we are concerned about from the grassroots level. Children's rights cover a wide scope, but I like to focus on their learning and studying. I've seen many kai fongs, and children from grassroots families have to leave home early, and they have to do a lot of homework after school, and many of them would need to attend tutorials or private tuitions. These kids would like to study hard so that they can actually achieve upward mobility, but they don't have enough resources, and their parents cannot afford to pay for the private tuitions, and they also have limited choice in terms of extracurricular activities. They can't afford to learn ballet, dancing, or music. Extracurricular activities have always to do with their studies and doing their homework. And even if they take tutorial lessons, they can't afford quality tuition because of the lack of means. So they therefore tend to lag behind in the performance in examinations. So the cultural capital is much more limited compared with their more affluent peers. We want the government to subsidize them for their extracurricular activities. Every child, whatever their background, we can narrow the difference. We can also help promote the personal development. We should really address the disparity in the environment in which different children grow up. The family of these children from grassroots households are not able to help these children, and they cannot afford to pay for the private tuitions, and sometimes they have to rely on their parents, but the parents may not be so well educated to help them. For example, when children study English, the parents are not able to help them and to give them the support, and therefore they are rendered even more helpless. I hope the schools and the government will, in respect of the disparity among the students, provide the children with support. In the long run, if children lag behind their peers, their self-respect will suffer, they will suffer from depression and so on. So I hope the government will address this issue and help the children to learn effectively. Thank you, Mr. Chow. Next, Mr. Hong Wing Fai from the Civic Party. Thank you. The government has provided some background papers for this meeting, and they gave us some figures regarding the subsidies given to school children. But in order to safeguard the human rights of children, I think those numbers are not enough. We have to look at the education, welfare, and the labor issues. Once you talk about the labor issue, one always think about standard working hours because children need to be cared for by the family members. If the parents of these children have to work, both have to work and they work long hours, they wouldn't have time to spend with the children. We hope, therefore, the government will really do something in respect of standard working hours and to come up with a family-friendly employment policy so that they can improve the help and ensure the children have a better environment to develop. Right now, we don't have sufficient child custody service. So would the government consider as providing more resources and the quota and to shorten the waiting time? And also, can the child custody service could also provide children with, private tuition and even dinner? The government might say that we already have many subsidy schemes to help these children. But the point is not how much the government is spending, but rather whether the application procedure is very complicated. Just imagine the parents that work long hours. When they go home, they may not have time to understand the government, papers and application forms, and therefore they may miss, their deadline for application. Could the government streamline the procedure to help these families? If children are deprived of the support because of procedural reasons, you are depriving them of their rights. As a teacher, I also like to talk about the examination fees. For the DSE, examination fee in 2018, it will amount to more than 2,000. But the waiver scheme said that only students taking full-day courses are entitled to a waiver. Even for private students, there are restrictions. And some children may already have quit school when they reach secondary 4 and 5, but they still want to attend the examination afterwards. But because of these constraints, they're not able to obtain the waiver for the examination fees. So these children want to change the destiny by their own hard work, but so is it fair that they are denied the chance? So could the EAA Exam and Assessment Authority relax the criteria, and that the Student Finance Office can also provide support for these students? Finally, when one talks about poor children, one always thinks one is reminded of the condition of the ethnic minorities because the family members that they're not able to get jobs which pay well. So we want to ensure equal development opportunities for children. Next, Madam Lokalai. Good morning. I come from an organization representing children from the grassroots households. Once I shared with a friends about my work experience. There's a kid who told me she wanted to learn how to play the piano, but the family couldn't afford it. As she applied for a subsidy of $1,500, after 2 months he quit. Now he's learning to skip, but he doesn't really like skipping. So he told me that he would really like to learn the piano. And my friend said, well, why is this kid so unhappy? It's not that he doesn't have a chance to learn, but now he's already learning to skip. I didn't want to argue with him, but I suddenly realized that as a child from a grassroots background, he does not even have a choice. For example, even if he has a computer, he can go online, but the machine, the computer he uses will only start working in 50 minutes. So the human rights for children only satisfy their basic needs. And recently, I conducted a survey on the habit of children using computers. We had a 5-person focus group involving senior primary students. And these children told me that the children were coming up with all kinds of noises, that the computer would hang after a while, and they have to wait for a long time for it to be rebooted. They don't have many softwares. They learn how to, they can't download the Go Fong software and so on. And for the middle class children, Within those half hours, they shared with me how good the computers were, and they couldn't live without the computers. They shared with me the experience of how they use the software to make posters and videos, and that computers are really a great help. So whereas the children from the grassroots background, they have problems even using the hardware. How can we say that they can use the computer to help them learn? How can they be able to use the softwares to satisfy their basic rights? If a child is not only concerned about whether he has food to eat, but rather he is also concerned about a family which is so poor, and they sometimes will say, I'll quit these activities because my mom cannot afford it. So for these children, they are already very precocious despite a young age. So have we really satisfied the basic rights of these children who are precocious at such a young age? Next, Madam Ho Yu-ying. Thank you. I fully agree with Lo Ka-lai. So what exactly is human rights? Does it mean that you give them a piece of you want very slow, an obsolete computer, or you to give them one course in swimming and you have already satisfied their human rights? We also like to ask how many of these children can go online. Well, some of them will use their mom's cell phone to go online. You talk about all kinds of subsidy schemes, but in fact, they have to draw lots before they can, and be entitled. So is that really protection of the rights? In 1994, the Convention on Children's Rights was extended to Hong Kong. We have a duty to enact legislation and resort to administrative means to implement the convention. But in Hong Kong, we've never attached importance to children's rights. We don't have a policy to implement that convention. For poor children, I think that their entitlements in terms of welfare and education is very fragmented. I've come across children who are undernourished, and the school asks the parents to attend to the doctor. They'll say you should have a balanced diet, you should, drink milk and vitamin pills. But the fact is that the family simply cannot afford such nutritious food. So the problem is not resolved. So they will continue to see the doctor. The conditions don't improve. On development rights, the Labour Welfare Bureau always talk about the Children Development Fund and help children develop their interests. But all these schemes are very fragmented, depending whether the children have the luck before they will have a chance. I have found, a pair of siblings applying for subsidized swimming course. They go there, they queue early in the morning, but only one of them was eventually off the place.
And the government is talking about STEM or coding, but if the children are in such difficulty, how can they continue to learn? Children's rights is not just about welfare; it's also about their human rights. We have to safeguard their human rights. Our alliance has some recommendations, and hopefully the government can address them. First, for an allowance for children who cannot receive low-income family allowance, and the leave allowance should not be linked to the number of working hours, and to optimize learning schemes, and grassroots should be subsidized so that they can purchase computers, and technical support and software support should be given, and the extracurricular activities should be incorporated into CSSA, and the threshold for children should be adjusted. And for the Children's Commission, we hope there would be grassroots participation. Thank you very much. The Alliance for Students with Special Learning Needs, Ms. Kwok. Thank you. Children should enjoy their rights, and SEN students or SEN children are also children who should enjoy those rights, and they should have the right to health care. I'd like to talk about SEN students who are age 6 or above. And one of the papers here says the government pays a lot of attention to SEN students by providing appropriate support, and they have equal chances to education, and support would be given if needed. SEN students would not be affected in their learning because of their family conditions. That's what they wrote. However, SEN students should receive support not just in school and also in the community or family. But I want to point out that support is not necessarily given in schools. The Education Bureau will provide subsidy to schools based on the number of SEN students, but the schools can allocate the resources as they wish, and parents have no choice. The students receiving the right services. I'm not saying that this is the case for all schools, but for a lot of grassroots parents, they told us that schools would only offer consultation, lessons, etc. But SEN students have different needs. Is there any specific support or treatment? And these services are free of charge in the school, but parents must follow the school's decision. If they cannot use the school services, they have to look for the services themselves outside. They might enroll in training courses or treatments by private operators, and each session will cost a few $100s or up to $800. For SEN children, they might have multiple needs, and they have to parents have to spend more than $3,000 per month. And for more needy families, they cannot afford private services. So would the learning of SEN children be affected? Would their education really not be affected, as you said? They have no choice in school services, and the private services range widely in prices. So how can the SEN children receive long-term services? And the SEN services should be incorporated into the SWD, and subsidies should be given for SEN children so that they can receive community support. Thank you very much. And Mr. Ho from Community Advancement. When I look at the list of officials, apart from the Labor and Welfare Bureau, even though most government departments or bureaus sends representatives, they are not very senior officials. So the people who should be here did not come. So this is regretful. Carrie Lam recently said that she was touched by the situation of SEN children, so she is doing a lot. In recent years, for SEN children, things have been done. But as Ms. Kwok said, for those age 6 or more, in terms of education or community support, we did not see any improvement. And it was still a mess in a lot of the cases. In terms of integrated education, Carrie Lam also said enhancing school-based management. So the future is dim for our education. For a lot of SEN services, for those age 6 or above, they operate on a self-financing basis because the LWB refused to offer funding. And they make it sound like SEN children will no longer have any needs after 6 years old. So this is absurd. They are putting the responsibility on the Education Bureau. And earlier, Dr. Lochi Kwong said he will explore what the LWB can do for children, SEN children in primary school. I hope the LWB can look at the NGOs offering SEN services. You can look at the assessments and etc. and the prices. There are at least $400 to $800 for a 45-minute session, and grassroots family can never afford these services. And sometimes, if you want a written report, you have to pay another $1,000. And for some activities, assessments are required. So this is the result of the government refusing to subsidize the services, and the users have to bear the full costs. And many of them could not afford these services because not all NGOs would offer subventions to grassroots. Some parents were anxious and they took out loans in order to buy these services. Today we are talking about human rights. If the government refuses to bear the responsibility, it's a jeopardy of the children's rights. For SEN services, including treatments, therapies, they should be incorporated into the subvention of the SWD so that grassroots families can use the SEN services. Thank you very much. The concerned groups for playing computer games. My name is Wang Siwoon. I'm 12. I'm in primary 5. Life is very difficult, or it's troublesome. On a scale of 1 to 10, I think going to school ranks 7. And if I do not complete the online homework, we will be made to copy a lot of text, and even playing is tiresome and troublesome. And I will give it a score of 4 in terms of the degree of troublesome. And sleeping is the only time I can relax. I do not really have a dream, and there's not much I want because nothing really interests me. But if I have to name one thing, I want to become an artist because apparently an artist have a very relaxed life. I will draw a lot of cartoons to make people happy and relax, and this way all the hassles would go away. Are you done? Thank you very much. The concerned group for stable internet access, Ms. Sun Hiu Nam. We always say that knowledge can change lives and education can promote upward mobility. But the injustice cannot be overcome by the grassroots. The poor children are already starting late, and they are apparently invisible. We have more than 40,000 SEN children, which is not a small number. Integrated education aims to ensure fair access to education for all children. And the Education Bureau issued guidelines on a whole school approach, and they thought this is the answer to all problems. Most schools don't even have enough resources and capability to support SEN children, and the public awareness is very low, and there's not enough support on frontline teachers. And even with the assessment by 100 or so psychologists, the needs cannot be met. Parents do not know the situation of their children in school, and in the with the inadequate whole school approach, SEN children do not receive equal access to education, and schools cannot support the students enough, and so the parents have to resort to services outside the school. And even if such services are available, they are very expensive, and parents cannot afford them because they are equivalent to 1 month's rent. So 0 to 6 years is a golden period for treatment. So after 6 years old, the government is ignoring the children. Why are you being so ignorant? We request the government to review integrated education and SEN services should be included in the SWD subvention, and in primary and secondary school, there should be a coordination platform for parents to ensure the education rights. We always say children are our future, but we also have to think about their present, and we should do more for these children.
係孫曉林，跟住我
Thank you, Ms. Xun. The concerned group for children who want places to run. Mr. Lokit, my name is Lokit. I'm 10. I want to take part in a lot of activities, but my home is small, so I cannot do these activities. I joined the rope jumping team, but I cannot practice at home because if I do, I might mess up the place, so I have to go to the park, but then I have homework to deal with. I also have to attend tuition, and by the time I finish, it's already 7 or 8. I have very limited time. I'm on the 6th floor, and I have to use the staircase. Sometimes I do not want to go out. I hope I would have more resources in the future so that I can join the activities I want, and I cannot cycle in Mong Kok, and hopefully we can have a cycle park in Mong Kok. Thank you. The concerned group for insects at home. Ms. Chen Yok Mui, I'm from a single family. I have 2 children, one in primary 4, one primary 6. The CSSA payment is very low, and my children seldom leave home. They stay in our own community. They can only play in our nearby park. Since the CSSA payment is so little, my children cannot go further. We have to pay a lot of for transportation, and we have to take lunch outside, so we cannot afford to bring my kids to places very far. My elder daughter wants to go to the beach, and she found an artificial beach, and she wants me to take her there. But I said we have no money, and we have to pay for transportation for 3, and we have to pay for lunch, so we cannot do it, and she's very disappointed. And we applied for $1,500 of youth subsidy, and my daughter wanted to learn swimming, but I could not find the money. So with the subsidy, we received $1,500 for the first part of the course, but then we had to stop. And the teacher asked whether she wanted to continue, and my daughter said we have no money. And the teacher said, "So are you an orphan?" And I was really sad. But the reality is that I cannot pay another $1,500 for the next course.
In Hong Kong, we can't even afford $1,000 to pay for swimming lessons. I really feel very bad about that myself. My daughter is doing very well at school, but I've not been able to help her. Even her teacher said that she might need help with the English lessons, but I can't pay for her tuition, private tuition. Someone recommended her to attend a free private tuition course, but we've been waiting for 2 years. She's not even, offered a place yet. Sometimes we enroll for some of the free classes organized by the school, but again, she has to go through a selection process. Every child is entitled to his or her right of development. So I hope that the CSSA allowance could be increased so that we can pay for our children's taking part in extra curricular activities and to develop their interests, and that they will be supported in the studies. I also like to talk about a lunch subsidy. Right now, under the CSSA scheme, we are paid $280. Could the government also offer, a subsidy so that children will get their lunch free, and that way lightening the burden of CSSA recipient families. Next, we have Madam Lo Hoi Ha, Concerned Group for Healthy and Nutritious Food. Well, I'm a mother of 2 children. They are 10 and 12 respectively. My son is the younger one. He's suffering from the ADHD, attention deficit and hyperactive syndrome. When I took him to an assessment, I encountered many difficulties. We have to approach the teachers and the social workers for help. In the end, he was recommended to seek service. When my child attended primary school, he was not offered any supportive service. If we have to seek help from the private sector, charges are very expensive. I've learned that if I have to enroll for a course, it would cost several $1,000s for a 3-month course, and I think that's very expensive. And World Health Agency recommended a non-profit organization offering recommended a professor of psychiatry offering 1 month in treatment for my son. He really, was very helpful, but the service could not be extended. Subsequently, I was recommended, another doctor in some triple, but the service. But it was only for a month, and I was not able to seek further help elsewhere because it's very expensive. My son is now attending primary 5. He's not getting any remedial services, and his teacher said that it's not that every school offers such services to their children. Well, other schools, I said, may offer such services. Why is it that ours do not? He said, well, there's nothing we can do. Perhaps I can give him less homework and sort of move him to the front rows of the classroom. So this is really not helping the children with SEN at all. The government has funding for the schools. I don't know whether or not any of those funding has been spent on my child. I hope the government can offer children with SEN above the age of 6 the service that they need. I think the money should be spent on those children. Thank you, Ms. Low. Next, we have Mr. Malcolm Leung. Young children need a computer. Many of the kids come to our center and they are scrambling for a time slot to use the computers. I think children should be allowed to play, freely and engage in activities which are creative. So I think we should enhance the support scheme to help children go online, to provide sufficient facilities, support them going online. For example, subsidizing the procurement of computers and subsidize them for buying the softwares, antivirus software and so on, so the children will not have computers which are defective and enjoy what they can do as children. Next, Mr. Mak Pui Yun. morning. My name is Pt1. I've just been promoted to Primary 1. Since I have been promoted to Primary 1, I have to do more homework now. I would like to become a scientist when I grow up, and to make, a robot for my son to play with. Thank you. Thank you. Mac. Well, you're so young, you're already thinking of, having a son? Next, Madam Chairman Thai. Thank you. Good morning, my name is Thai. My husband works in a shipyard. He works long hours. And when he comes home, he spends very little time with the family. Every week he will only come home twice. He needs to work overtime all the time because he can only make ends meet by working time because his hourly wage is very low. So he has to work overtime all the time, and he's only making slightly more than $20,000. We have 3 kids attending Primary 1, Primary 4, and Secondary 4. But children are costing a lot. Every day we have to pay for all kinds of expenses. And once the school term begins, there will be all these notices from the school, and it's really a headache just reading them. I didn't realize that we have to pay for the, native English teachers employed by the school. It's $400, and we also pay for miscellaneous fees, air conditioner fees, and we have to pay several $1,000s just when the term started. Not to mention the textbook fee, and so on. From Secondary 1 to 3, the children have to eat the lunch at school. My eldest daughter now have to eat outside of school. I don't know how much I have to pay for her lunch every day. Do you know how much it costs for a meal? And we also have to pay for the transportation fees, and for the eldest child, it cost me more than $1,000. So everything costs money, and I'm under a lot of pressure. And I sometimes would do some part-time work at a place nearby so that I can take care of the children and my family as well. And it's very tiring. When I sit with my child when he's doing his homework, I would doze off. And sometimes I would lose my temper because I don't have enough rest. Accompanying our children to do the homework is very difficult and tough because I'm not very good in English, and well, my child attending Primary 1, I have to accompany him doing his homework, but I don't know a lot. I'm not very educated myself. My children would rarely participate in extracurricular activities. They don't have private tuition lessons. Sometimes when the school would, give us notices asking whether my son is interested in attending any of the activities, I would say no. I'm getting a half fee waiver for my children, but we're not benefiting from the lunch subsidies or subsidies for them to attend extra curricular activities. Like kindergarten school fee waivers, I think the government should allow households earning 75% of the median household income, so the CSSA household will have a chance to develop the interest. Thank you. Next, Madam Wong Wei Ling. Good morning. My name is Wong Wei Ling. I have a son attending K3. Earlier, I rented, a cubicle which is 80 square feet in size, and then subsequently I moved to a larger place, 150 square feet. But then the roof is leaking, and all the cement is falling down. So I mean, both of us now are suffering from nasal allergies. So but despite the nasal allergy, we thought at least we get more space, but room for my son to do his homework. But now in kindergarten, I realized that children have to have a computer, and when the kindergarten give us, CD-ROM to do a homework, but we can't pay to buy for the computers. We are on the CSSA. Since we now have to pay more rent, and after paying the rent, we simply can't afford to buy a computer. So I hope the government will also allow kindergarten children to subsidize the purchase of a computer. I used to buy a second-hand computer, but it broke down shortly afterwards, and the serviceman said I might as well buy a new one. I hope the government can provide a scheme to help students repair the computers which are broken down. Thank you, Madam Wong. Next, Mr. Ho Sing Hei. Madam Ho Sing Hei. My name is Ho Sing Hei. I'm 5, attending K3. I live in a 150 square feet cubicle with both of my parents. The 3 of us will sleep on the same bed. I like my mom to buy a set of engineering toys with screwdrivers, hammers, and rulers. When I grow up, I want to become an engineer. Since we don't have money now, the place we live in is very small. I want to build a 20-story building for my parents so that I can live with them in this building. This is the roof. This is my pa. That's me. That would be Granny, my younger brother and sister. My elder sister could be a designer to decorate our home. My elder brother could be a security guard. And the 3 of us can all live in this home of ours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a very good idea, and I hope your wish will come true. And from the Children's Right Development Group, Lai Miu Chen, I have 2 children. One is in primary, one in K2. But I do not work, and I live in a subdivided flat. Rent is very expensive, and my home is very small. And my children have nasal allergy, and I cannot afford to send them to different classes. My children learn quite well in school, and the school says they have good English, so I should let them learn English, and each lesson costs $50. And the teacher says it's only $50. It's not a lot of money. Why don't you sign up? So can you not even afford $50? When we sign up for competition, sometimes my children would be chosen. But if you have no money, there's nothing they could do. They could not take part. We have no money. And I have to borrow money from friends and relatives. And we have to fetch food from the food banks. Sometimes my children lack nutrition and their skin would peel off and the doctor would say they lack vitamins they need, and they would prescribe drugs, but we cannot afford them. So we can only take the cheapest drugs. My kids wonder whether the waste paper or bottles could be sold, and so that they have money to learn. And I felt sad, and sometimes I was embarrassed. And we have a very great financial burden, and we cannot enjoy the government subsidies, and we cannot receive the leafer. And cash subsidy to be given to people like us who are not eligible for leafer. Even though we are poor, you can still subsidize us. And we cannot afford to buy food for our kids, even if they are malnourished, and we cannot allow them to learn. Sometimes my friends would say, your kids are performing well. Why don't you send them to different classes? You know, singing class would cost money, and buying costumes or other gear would also cost money, but we cannot afford them. Thank you very much. We have heard you. The concerned group on going online on a computer, Ms. Lai Yan Cham. Good afternoon. I'm in primary 3. My school gives 6 to 7 items of homework. They are not very hard, but there is still a lot. So during recess, I would stay in the classroom for homework. But sometimes, well, I want to stay in the classroom, but since I had no computer at home during recess, I would do my e-homework in the computer room. I don't really like to go to the computer room because time is very tight and a lot of people would be watching. So if I have a choice, I wish I have a computer at home. So after school, I would spend about an hour to finish the remaining homework, and after that I would draw, and my grandmother would put away my drawings. But since extracurriculars are very expensive, I can no longer learn. I want to learn about designing so I can design what I want. My dream is to become a fashion designer so that I can design beautiful clothes. I love dresses. I hope the clothes I design can be worn by my family. I hope you can all hear me. Yes, we heard you. Hopefully your wish will come true. Mr. Lam Xiupan, thank you. Gandhi said poverty is the worst form of violence. If this is true, 21% of our children are suffering such violence, and with government intervention, the ratio dropped to about 18%, which is still very high. It shows that Hong Kong's poverty gap and children poverty is very serious. I have some text to share with you. One is from the LegCo hands-out in 2003. Poverty would affect families, and it have serious consequences on children. So to tackle poverty, we should work on families. Another text was from LegCo in 1996. We often see tragedies stemming from poverty. Don't we feel uncomfortable? I still believe in conscience, and some people might choose to ignore such plight, and some people might forget the aim of economic development, which is to improve lives. If we are determined and with the right cooperation, we can tackle poverty and help needy people. And this way we can achieve a harmonious society. Who said this? It was from Dr. Law Chi Kwong, the current secretary, who was still a legislator, even though he's not here today. I hope Dr. Law would remember what he said back then. I have 3 suggestions. Today we are discussing children in poverty. Apart from immediate support, we should help them leave poverty and to avoid intergenerational poverty. We should enhance subsidy for children under CSSA and LIFA. We should have subsidies for computers, extracurricular activities, so that grassroots children would have equal rights to learn. We should enhance the repayment mechanism for tertiary education loans. Their grants and loans should be repaid based on their income. A lot of university graduates are already on a $100,000 debt, which is very hard on them. So that has led to intergenerational poverty. And we hope the government would set up poverty alleviation targets. A poverty line is not enough. There must be targets. Thank you very much. From the Yao Chin Mong Children's Rights Concern Group, Mr. Lee Kok Kyun. Thank you. Today we are discussing the human rights of children under poverty. But a lot of parents and children mention issues with money. Does the government not have any measure to deal with expenses of grassroots families or children? But for LIFA, or low-income family assistance, it aims to help families with the working poor. But it is linked to the number of working hours of the family members. So for the working poor, their children need cash subsidy or financial support. It somehow is linked to the number of working hours for their parents, and somehow the subsidy is linked to the work performance of their parents. So is that what you mean by human rights? As for the digital divide, a lot of schools are promoting digital or e-learning. So the support for grassroots children is far from enough. A lot of children would linger in community centers or schools, and they need to borrow the computers to complete their homework. And the reason is they might be living in subdivided flats. They might not have computers or Wi-Fi access. So they need to seek these services in the community. But for such families, the digital education would only further widen the gap. So why can't the government be more progressive and consider support for the needy children? We talked about the subsidies, for example, textbook assistance or CSSA. When school starts, subsidies would be given. But textbook assistance would only cover books. And for other expenses, the families still have to pay themselves. And everything is money. A lot of Kai Fong has been saying that they have no money, but is the government being so ignorant? And our children have to rely on resources and money as they develop. Why are you widening this gap? I hope the government can address the children's wishes, and we should see how the government respond to your wishes. Thank you very much. From the Public Youth Policy Platform, Ms. Ho Si-wai, I represent the young people. For those aged 15 to 24, we have 740,000 of those in Hong Kong, and many of them are under the poverty line. So of these 140,000 people, I have a story to share, which is a story of poverty alleviation. And our employment is biased towards these 4 pillar industries, and so our youth have to study the relevant disciplines. So they have to get good scores in DSE, and they have to enter university, and the school fees must be cheap enough, and they must be acceptable. So we must continue to study. But our education resources are so market-oriented, so money is very important. Money is important to nurture your talents. So for these 140,000 people, they might receive free tuition. They suffer from the digital divide, and they have no choice in what they join. We talk about whole person development. So, but they are left isolated without any support. And in terms of language proficiency, they will suffer further because their parents do not speak English and they cannot afford tuition. So we talk about fair competition. So, well, everyone would take the DSE exam, but is this really what you call fair? It's not the case. For poor families, or poor children, they cannot afford UGC programs, so they have to go to associate degree programs, which are self-financing, and the tuition is very expensive. It costs up to $100,000 a year. So for associate degree students, they have to apply for non-means loans. But for 4-person families, the threshold is very high, and their parents might take casual jobs, and it's very hard for them to make ends meet. And when we repay the loans, we also have to repay the interest. So many people are on debt. About 30% of the students are on debts from $100,000 to $200,000, and they have to repay for more than 10 years. So if we talk about equal learning opportunities, we should empower the children so that they can learn equally. They are not begging the government for benefits. We are talking about a fundamental issue with the education system. So equal learning rights should not be related to your wealth or luck. So the children's well, this subcommittee should not be headed by officials, so we should have more UGC programs as well. So I urge everyone to stand up and make your requests heard to the government. Children's rights should not be welfare. Children's poverty should be solved.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Ho. Next, Mr. Leung Kok Hong, Chairman. I'd like to take this opportunity to salute yourself and other members who are filibustering against the co-location arrangement. When you filibuster on behalf of the people of Hong Kong to protest against the co-location arrangements which threaten our human rights, the pro-government camp is saying that you are wasting time. We're talking about children's rights today. There are only 3 members present here, Mr. Wan Siu Kim, Mr. Siu Ka Chun. They're all from the pro-democracy camp. Where are the members from the DAB? Those who, well, my former colleague, what's her name? Dr. N. Jiang, suggest that we can invent a new system and help people, say, make some saving until they reach the age of 18. Just take a look at these kids. And Jiang. Sorry. Well, we have someone from DAB. Is Choi Ying-wai here? Oh, he's here. You come from the DAB. You're the deputy chairman of the youth league of the DAB. But you're not, representing DAB to fight for the interests of young people. Instead, you join the administration. When people ask you a question about the minimum wage, you didn't know how to answer the question. Have you done your homework today? Do you know how to answer the question about the lever and I was supposed to be sitting there, but I was disqualified. Nobody knows you. But now you're the undersecretary earning $200,000 a month. Could you tell me, in a while, what are you doing to help the children? Carrie Lam said that she's going to allocate $400 million. Oh, well, is she saying that, as long as the children don't starve to death, it will be fine? So I think this, council is really rotten to the core. You accuse the pro-democracy camp for filibustering. I'd like to appeal to all the DAB members to come back to this chamber. We have all the children here this morning. None of them in the DAB cares about you. These people are totally, dishonest. So, Mr. Choi, could you tell me what new initiatives does Carrie Lam have, other than allocating $400 million? But children don't want to just fed with bread. Children, do you like bread? Yes, you do. What else do you need? There's no bread on your table. Mr. Choi Ying-wai, I can say this to you. The pro-government camp can't qualify to become electoral members, and now you are sitting on the other side saying you are representing the children. Could you ask Mr. Choi, the Undersecretary, ask him to remind Carrie Lam and the DAB to do better, especially Dr. N. Jiang. She talked about life planning. She should actually plan her career as an electoral member first. We will ask Mr. Choi in a while to respond. All right. Next, Madam Tang Mei Ching. today we're talking about the rights of poor children. Hong Kong has a capitalist system which is a source of poverty. So a small number of rich people have to rely on the system to exploit the majority in order to safeguard their interests. The majority is now suffering, and our children are the victims of the system. Originally, education, housing, medicine, and so on are the fundamental rights. But in Hong Kong nowadays, they're not guaranteed. And poverty is handed down from one generation to another. When a child is born, his family background already determines his fate. And there is no equal opportunities at all. In Hong Kong, we have a 15-year free education. That's only a myth. The government is saying that starting this year, there will be 15 years of free education. There will be free kindergarten. But we learned it will only cover the half-day kindergartens. In other words, most parents still have to pay for their children's tuition fees. For a woman who is works as a cleaner, she can't send her child to a half-day kindergarten because she has to work for more than 10 hours. She will have to send her child to a whole day kindergarten, because kindergarten also plays the role of child care center. Because in Hong Kong we do not have a child care service or child care service. We are such an advanced economy, we don't have publicly operated kindergartens, and this is a shame. And in the private market, kindergartens are increasing their fees every year. If the Hong Kong government is going to offer 15 years of free education, why is it that we have some mothers from grassroots households are paying more than $2,000 for the kids' kindergarten fees? I have all the receipts here. $970 is just payment to retain their place, and then the school fee is more than $2,000 a month. Winter uniform 900 something, textbook 900 something, and this is what household families cannot afford. Some mothers today have children at the age of 6 and 7 who are still not attending school because they cannot afford such expensive school fees. And so even if you claim that you're offering 15-year free education, you're not. For example, the Student Finance Office, it's delaying payment of the subsidies. Sometimes parents who've been offered, subsidies, the payment of subsidies is delayed for 8 months, and therefore the parents have to pay, to foot the bill beforehand. But the mother cannot afford to pay that. So could the Student Finance Office please tell us how it's going to resolve this problem? All right? How much money are you earning? Can I delay the payment of your salaries? Would you still be here attending this meeting with us? Finally, the capitalist system in Hong Kong is the source of poverty in Hong Kong. Is heaven for the rich and hell for the poor. The poor people pay the lowest tax rate in Hong Kong, and Carrie Lam is saying that she's going to cut the taxes for the rich further. So we therefore strongly urge that there should be a tax on wealth. The government should offer free kindergarten and child custody service, and to put an end to this unjust capitalist system. Next, Madam Chair Ye. Before I prepare for my submission, I had visited some people living in subdivided flats. My target was living in a cubicle in a flat which is 870 square feet. There were 5 households living in this flat, and this child I visited lived in a cubicle with a window. I found that next to the window they have placed many of the homeworks the child had to, hand to the teachers. For the other families, there are 5 children living in those cubicles. The age ranges from 5 to 11. In order that the plant that they grow as part of the homework have air and moisture, they will ask this young person to take care of the plants next to the window. Children know that for plants to grow, it needs air and sunshine. for the 3 kids living in cubicles without a window. They live in flats with the cubicles without a window. So I met with the parents. So how bad are people living in a subdivided flat? I'm sure you all know that the 4 walls are all moldy and there were bugs all over the place. I can imagine that the children have been smitten by the bugs. Other than being bitten by the bugs, they also have some skin allergy. So I asked the parents why was that, and they told me that the doctor was saying that they were undernourished. And because the parents work long hours and because they are poor, so they're not able to provide 2 meals for the children with meat that can provide the necessary nutrition to build up a good immune system. After I have covered their story, I also consulted with the doctors regarding nutrition for children. I also made inquiries about the meal provisions for children at school. For many years, I have heard different organizations demanding that at least 2 meals should be offered free to school children, but the government has not really undertaken to do that. So with improper nutrition and poor living conditions, poor children simply cannot fight for their rights. What they can do is simply to fight for the plants that they were growing to be exposed to some sunshine and air. In the policy address, the government says that it will be using public housing units and convert them into tenant purchase scheme, units, and that would delay the time for the poor households to be allocated PRH units. So I hope that the government can offer, a more decent living condition for the children, and so that they will have a prospect. Next, Mr. Leung Lai Pong. In Hong Kong, 1 out of 4 children is poor. We have 200,000 poor children in Hong Kong. Under our medical system, it's considered to be the standard of a third world country. 20% of the children cannot attend to the doctors when they're sick, and 60% of our children have to delay the treatment because I don't know whether the officials have ever tried to call up the GPO clinics. Well, it's very difficult to call that number. If you go to the A&E ward for treatment, you have to wait for 4 or 5 hours, and it's ridiculous. Just imagine the workers at the grassroots level, cleaning workers and so on. They work more than 10 hours a day. They simply don't have time to queue up at the general outpatient clinic.
制度就係逼啲工人或者基層嘅市民。
The current system forces these workers or grassroots to use private services. We have 200,000 people in Hong Kong living in subdivided flats, and according to some surveys, about 80% of children living in subdivided flats had spinal issues. And very often they have no tables and they have to do their homework on the bed. Will the government improve? It's impossible for them to improve on housing and healthcare. What is Carrie Lam's government doing? And they are reducing public housing supply. They are promoting green form subsidized housing. So what has the Carrie Lam administration said? They said they will inject $300 million to the Children Development Fund, and we only have, we have 200,000 children under poverty, and each would only get about $1,000. So what they do is not serious. They are only acting like they are doing something. Under extreme capitalism, even adults find it hard to survive, let alone children. And the Carrie Lam administration is jeopardizing poor children and workers. For the previous term, for the C.Y. Leung administration, he said poor people had no right to vote. And Carrie Lam was also elected via a small circle election, and they are defending the rich people and they are defending capitalism. They would not improve livelihoods. She would not do anything. So that is the reality of our government. If we are to change the fate of our children in the future or to improve their rights, resistance is the only mean. We have to overturn the system. Thank you.
Of the Socialist Action Anti-Racist Campaign.
Thank you. My name is Griffith Jones. I'm a member of Socialist Action and as of this week residing in Hong Kong for 21 years. Historically, the official rate of poverty in Hong Kong has hovered around 20% for the past 30 years. As low as 17% in 1991 before the handover and as high as 26.8% in 1998. According to the 2016 Poverty Situation Report by the Census and Statistics Department of the Hong Kong government, the poverty rate in 2015 was 18%, which means that nearly 1 in 5 children is living in poverty today. This is high compared to other developed economies. Denmark, 3.7, the UK, 9.8, 15.1 for Australia. In fact, it's only lower than the US, my home country, which stands at 21.2%. Child poverty, in a sense, the cruelest, in that it limits and crushes human potential, occurs in the overall context of socioeconomic inequality. The government's slogans, positive non-interventionism, or creating, not redistributing wealth, typify the policies advocated by the government's Commission on Poverty since its founding in 2012. And what has been the result 5 years on? In June, the government announced that the Gini coefficient, an index that measures the wealth gap for households, rose to a record high last year, the highest figure since the government began keeping such records 46 years ago. Further, according to Oxfam Hong Kong and based on research by Chinese University, nearly 2/3 of poor households are in a state of, quote, food insecurity, unquote, suffering hunger or eating low-cost food leading to health problems due to an imbalanced diet. Here's some fun facts. Low-income families spend over 40% of their income on food. Most poor children do not get 3 meals a day. 72% of poor children eat leftover foods, while 15% even eat expired foods. But what's the story behind these figures? What's the human cost of growing up in a family where they're forced to choose between, for example, food for children or an expensive medical procedure for a relative? And this doesn't just apply to those below the official poverty line, but to at least the 20% of working families above that line as well. Since in Hong Kong, the government's poverty line should actually be called extreme poverty line. There is also an aspect of systemic racism, the government's stingy treatment of refugees who can't work, receive tuition subsidies on an average of 5 months after school deadline for payment, and get only $1,500 for housing. They aren't even allowed library cards. For all the government's talk of neoliberal talk of social entrepreneurship and other efforts to privatize away its responsibilities, where's consideration for the emotional pain from the daily humiliation of dependency and powerlessness that is life for the poor? We demand the government tax the rich, invest more money in the people of Hong Kong into education, healthcare, and decent jobs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jones. Next, we would like to invite Ms. Juria. Yes.
Yes, good morning. My name is Julia. I'm an asylum seeker. My daughter is Aisha, is 5 years old. She's now studying in Kato kindergarten. I want the government to answer my question. First, how can a refugee child survive in Hong Kong? I cannot afford my daughter to study in kindergarten. What is your answer? In Hong Kong, there is no public government kindergarten. All kindergarten are private. It is not fair to poor children and families because many cannot afford their kids to go to school. Although I want to work and earn for a living, refugees and asylum seekers do not have the right to work in Hong Kong. We are forced to rely on financial assistance from government, and it's very little. For one person, I get $1,500 per month for house rent. For house, can we get for $1,500 per month in Hong Kong? I live in a subdivided unit in Samsipo. It is less than 100 square meters. The rent is $4,700. Where can I get the rest of the money? Apart from the rent, every month I need to pay $2,000 for the school fee in kindergarten. Where do I find the money? The SFA from the government student financial assistance agency say they can fund the poor student, but they always delaying our case that I cannot get any money until many months for document approval. Because of this, I'm always late to pay the school fee. My daughter has almost been kicked out from the kindergarten. I have to borrow the money from friends. I have been told many times that my daughter will be expelled if I don't pay the school fees. I strongly demand that SFA should pay for the school fees first. Why cannot the SFA give the children financial aid for one school year? I also need to buy the school book and uniform for my daughter. It is very expensive, not only for the refugees family, but all poor families in Hong Kong. Education is a basic right. I have the same concern as many parents in Hong Kong. Our concern is our children, education and future. Education is and should be a basic right for all children. Kindergarten should be free for all. Only this can protect our children and provide a basic education for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Julia. Next, we'd like to invite Ms. Halima.
Yes, good morning. My name is Halima. I am a asylum seeker. I have 3 children. They are 8 years old, 6 years old, and 4 years old, studying in K2, P1, and P3. Children who have right to go to school, to study and learn, so they could have future, but many poor families cannot see it for their children. My son is 8 years old. He loves reading books. One day, he asked me, "Mom, why can't I borrow the book from the library?" I don't know how to answer. The Hong Kong public book does allow refugee children to borrow the book. What kind of human rights do children have? If they cannot even borrow the book from the public library. This is happening to all asylum seekers. I have 5 family members. We leasing its subsidies unit is about 150 square feet. The rent is $6,000. We have already used up all the financial assistance on living. I have to borrow money from friends, asking for donation for many whole family. They cannot go any school picnic or sport day because they have no money for sports. This is not just my child. All poor children are suffering. Education should be a basic right. It should be free for all, but not all children in Hong Kong can have these basic rights. My daughter is 4 years old. She is studying K2. I have to pay for $2,700, and she is here. $2,700 every month for the school fee. The SFA, Student Financial Assistance Agency, always delay 3 or 4 months for the school fee, sometimes 6 months. That means they force me to pay the school fee first, and then I can claim it back later. I don't have money to pay. This is very suffering. I even got a letter from the school saying my kid will be kicked out if I still delay to pay, because for my son, the second son, I didn't pay for 2 months, and they give me a letter. It's like they will kick out my son when I didn't pay. Can you imagine how suffering is it? Some of my doctor classmates has already been kicked out. school fee was 2,069 per month in 2016. This is now 2,700 in 2017. School fee is increased every year, and this is harder and harder for poor family to afford. The problem of linking money to pay the school fee is a problem for asylum seeker family. There should be free kindergarten of the Hong Kong government is responsible for this. Admit the refugee leaders who have rights to use a public library to borrow books, secondary as FAA should pay full of the poor children for their school fee and not asking them to pay first. Thirdly, the social welfare department must increase our house rents and food subsidy so our children can have enough food and basic education. If you cannot profit this, you should give us the right to work. We want to have right to work. We are forced to depend on the government because all asylum seekers are not allowed to work in Hong Kong. We want to be available to work in order to feed ourselves and our children.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Halima. Your daughter isn't going to speak, right?
Sorry?
Your daughter, Olivia, is not going to speak. Is she?
This is my friend's daughter.
Your friend's daughter, okay. Is
This
Olivia going to speak?
Yes.
Olivia, is your turn.
I want to go to school.
Actually, she is 7 years. Until
Okay.
now, he didn't go to school.
I see. She does not go to school.
Yes. He don't know how to read, and he don't know how to write. It's like my doctor, he was raised ABC 1, 2, 3 until 10. He just look at actually what are you doing.
Why doesn't she go to school?
His mother try because if he go to school, we need to pay first. You know, asylum seeker, they don't allow to work, and they ask to pay the school by cash. And the mother was in the jail because he tried her best for the child to go to school.
Okay, we understand. Thank you. We will certainly follow up on this situation.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
We have heard from more than 30 deputations. This session will last till 10:50. I would like to invite the government to respond first. We might need to extend the meeting, but we might not have time for questions from members. I want to deal with the 4 motions on hand first, but before that, I want to allow the government to speak. After that, we will take a break before resuming. I don't have time to consolidate or summarize these views.
Many of the deputations touch on the subject of the digital divide, the poor living conditions, and because of the subsidy scheme, including the CSSA, the LEVA, the student financial scheme, and because of the inadequacies that children are suffering from malnutrition. I've heard many of them have nasal allergies or are undernourished. For some of the groups, like the asylum seekers, we've heard about their unique needs. We've also heard that the Student Finance Office is late with the payment of subsidies, and for the poor families, this is causing them a problem. So I will not summarize any further. Why don't I, first of all, invite Mr. Choi to respond? Thank you. In the last 5 years, we have been increasing the expenditure on social welfare by 7%. In term, we are working hard to tackle poverty. We are encouraging people who have the ability to work on self-reliance. We have the LEVA scheme. The rationale is to encourage more people to take up employment. As at the end of last month, number of people who received subsidies exceeded more than 100,000, of which 58,000 are young people and adolescents. I understand that we've heard suggestions that we should enhance the scheme. In the policy address, we are now proposing many enhancements, and I will not elaborate on the details. We've increased the amount of the subsidies, and we've streamlined the application procedure. The Community Care Fund has done a lot in the past. It will continue to play its role. We're also exploring whether we can come up with new policies or pilot schemes. With the help of the Community Care Fund, we can help the underprivileged families. We will see whether or not we can, regularize these subsidies. The CSSA also provide for a safety net. While the government has a role, we're also encouraging, intersectoral collaboration. For example, we're going to inject $400 million into the Community Care Fund to help the vulnerable, including 100,000, students attending primary and secondary schools. We will also be injecting $300 million to help another 9,000. In the Children's Development Fund, there are important elements. We can teach young children life planning, how to accumulate savings, and it's all these are very important support other than subsidies. We are also providing assistance for women to take employment. So we've actually relaxed the scheme for the ceiling for eligibility for free child custody service. So hopefully we will be able to benefit 3,000 children. In 2018-2019, in Sha Tin, Shenzhen, we will be providing 300 subsidized, whole day child custody service quotas. The Hong Kong U is now conducting a study on child custody care, and we hope next year this will be able to help us with the long-term planning. We've also heard about housing problems. Of course, we need to build more housing units. We have been giving subsidy to people living in subdivided flats. We'll also be working to help the single-parent families. The government is also plans to set up the Children's Commission next year. It will involve different departments. The CE is now spearheading the work of the preparatory committee. It was set up in September. It involves different departments and bureaus, including Labour and Welfare Bureau, the Health and Hygiene Bureau, the Home Affairs Bureau. We will be conducting a series of public consultation to collect public views, certainly including children as well. We see that children have their dreams, and we hope that in future we will be able to tackle many problems encountered by children in their development and come up with long-term targets and policies. Perhaps I'll pause here and ask my colleagues to supplement on the question about, how we support e-learning. Please be as concise as you can, because you have to deal with the 4 motions. I'm sorry, we have a tight schedule. Why don't we deal with the motions first? Mr. Ng. Actually, we still have many questions yet to be answered. We have many specific questions which have not been answered yet. But at this stage, I would first like to deal with the 4 motions. And then we're going to take a short break, after which we will come back to listen to more deputations and follow up on the questions we've just raised for this session. I have received 4 motions, 2 moved by Mr. Chiu Ka-chun and 2 by Mrs. Wen Xiu-kin, and they all are related to our topic. So, Mr. Siu Ka-chen, could you first of all read out your first motion? This committee urges the administration to incorporate the support service for children with SEN over the age of 6 into the scope of the government's of the SWD's scope of subsidized services. Those in favor? Unanimous. Your second motion, Mr. Siu. This committee urges the administration to provide subsidy for primary school children with SEN so that they can use the relevant community support services. Bracket. I suggest that we can make reference of the funding model for providing subsidy for children waiting for rehab service, preschool rehab service. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. And I hope the administration will respond to those two motions. Next, Mr. Wan Siu Kin, we have your first one, please. Only one. There are 3 points in my motion, which is about subsidies. The Electrical Select Committee on Children's Rights would like the government to review the low-income family allowance and the criteria in respect of the working hours of the parents, and the government should provide support for children who are applying for taxable allowance and have not yet received such allowances, and review the online support scheme for online learning, and to help school children provide subsidies for the children to buy their computers and softwares. Those in favor? Again, it's unanimous. And once again, this reflects some of the views raised by some of the deputations. Next, the Select Committee on Children's Rights urges the administration to set up the Children's Commission and at the same time ensure there will be sufficient participation by community groups and representatives from the grassroots households in order that we can lower the poverty rate for children. Those in favor? Again, it's unanimous. I'd like to thank the two members, and we are now going to take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back at 5 past.